We may have inadvertently released a fake news report. So says CNN, admitting that a Syrian prisoner they spotlighted could have offered their correspondent a made-up identity. That's the conclusion of an official probe by the US media giant itself.
We have subsequently been investigating his background and are aware that he may have given a false identity.
The report in question aired on CNN on the 11th of December, and it showed their correspondent, Clarissa Ward, entering a Syrian Air Force intelligence prison with her crew. And then they spotted that there was one cell that was locked, and it appears that there was a blanket that was moving. So the militants that she was with asked her to step aside while they busted the door open. And from there, this man emerged who identified himself as Adil Gerbal, supposedly a political prisoner who by that point had been locked up for 3 months and hadn't had water in 4 days. And apparently he was left there to rot since all other cells were empty. Let's see a clip.
I'm a civilian, he says. I'm a civilian.
Mike.
You're okay. He clutches my arm tightly with both hands. Okay. Does anyone have any water? This is the third prison they brought me to, he says. The third prison. After 3 months in a windowless cell, he can finally see the sky. You're okay. Stay with me, stay with me, he repeats again and again. The fighter hands him something to eat. He barely lift it to his mouth. His body can't handle it.
Now, there are so many weird elements about this that someone can see just by watching this report. First of all, he does not look like a man who had been in solitary confinement for 3 months. You can see just by his beard, by his fingernails. Again, when you see him going outside, he's not even squinting when he sees the light and the sunlight. And he claims that he went without water for 4 days. It's been medically proven that no one can survive longer than 3 days without water. But fine, let's give him the benefit of the doubt. You can see by his mouth, it's not even dry, nothing. What's more, this is what's very interesting. 5 days before the crew arrived, anti-government forces were there and they checked that prison. And some of the jihadists actually broadcasted entering that prison live on Facebook. Also, we know that there were families that went there looking for their relatives to see if someone stayed behind. And from all of those people, no one spotted that there was one cell that was locked and one man remained inside. That's what really doesn't add up. And again, we see the CNN crew, instead of taking him to hospital right away or to an ambulance, they actually pull up a chair and start interviewing him. And all of this looks really ridiculous. And that's why, of course, you had a lot of people online that started commenting right away and slamming this report as fake.
Yeah, it's also been called Oscar-worthy as well, and the perfect timing that it just happened to be there, you were working and you found this person being held. Many, many questions. By the way, it's not just people online, is it, as well as former detainees crying foul about this?
No, it's not. What's interesting is that there is a Western-backed fact-checking organization called Verify that said that actually this man, his identity is completely different. They backed up those statements through local residents. They exposed his true identity. And what's interesting, why it's interesting, is that the fact that they have ties to Washington. So that's why it's interesting that they were the ones that exposed it, and this is what they had to say.
Verify Psy, a Syrian fact-checking group, now says that this man is Air Force Intelligence First Lieutenant Salama Mohammed Salama, notorious for extortion and theft in Homs, who had been arrested due to disputes with his colleagues about profit sharing.
And now that disclaimer has since been added under that report so that people know that what they're watching is potentially fake, even though CNN continues to air it.
This isn't a novice in the field we're talking about either. Clarissa Ward, she's chief international correspondent for CNN. But here's the thing, it's not the first time she's been in the ethics firing line, right?
Exactly. Now, and also she's been there for a long time, and she has been described as Washington's propaganda asset, that she's been towing Washington's line. For example, we know that she produced really favorable reports. First of all, she was granted access, for example, back in, 2012, to Idlib, the Al-Qaeda enclave there. And also she produced favorable reports about the Free Syrian Army, which we know that they're, of course, supporting reported by the West. And then we had her appearing as part of the U.S. delegation at the UN Security Council, where she was talking about all these Islamic factions as being heroes on the ground and that their voices need to be heard. And then when there were other journalists, for example, the Grayzone's Max Blumenthal, who was producing reports from the other points of view about how Syrians were complaining and they were talking about how they were tortured by Western-backed forces, she straight away attacked him, saying that he doesn't know what he's talking about and he must be a drug addict. So she went straight to attack him. So we saw examples of her biased reporting for years now. And again, that's why some people are saying that perhaps maybe this was even staged. So they've gone as far as to say that the whole report itself was prepared in advance. The problem is that when they are proven that it's something false, they just sweep it under the rug like it never happened. They don't talk about it. That's the problem. They don't acknowledge it. They don't go loud about it. Even now with CNN, they're continuing to air it. Yes, they now say that they're investigating it, but only after people started talking about it. Whereas you should have done, this is part of journalism, right? You should double check a story. You shouldn't just take a man's word for it that he says that he was locked up for 3 months, didn't have water for 4 days. Check.